I'm Alyssa, 25, standing on the loading dock of a Cleveland distribution center, my breath fogging in the freezing air. A process server had just handed it to me in front of my entire shift crew. I looked down at the bold legal text. My parents, Richard and Cynthia, were suing me. The amount, $200,000. The cause breach of familial equity, apparently. My refusal to fund my brother Cameron's failed crypto startup was a crime against the family estate. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just stared at the sheer, unadulterated audacity of it all. I am reading the papers right now, surrounded by forklifts and freezing air. And I still cannot believe this is real life. Before I tell you what I did next, drop a comment and let me know. What is the most audacious thing a family member has ever demanded from you? I need to know. I am not the only one dealing with this level of delusion. Most people would have called their parents immediately. They would have screamed, cried, or begged for an explanation. I did none of those things. In logistics, when a critical node in the supply chain fails, you do not waste time mourning the breakage. You isolate the variable, assess the collateral damage, and reroute the entire system. My family had just formally declared themselves a liability, and I treated them exactly like a non-compliant vendor. I walked out of the distribution center and into the gray, biting cold of a Cleveland afternoon. I drove straight to my duplex in the Ohio City district. It was a historic brick structure that I had spent the last 2 years renovating with my own hands. Usually between the hours of midnight and 4 in the morning, I parked in the driveway, walked past the fresh tuck pointing on the porch, and locked the door behind me. The house was silent. It was the silence of ownership. I sat down at my kitchen island and opened my laptop. The screen's blue light cut through the gloom of the unlit room. I did not call Richard or Cynthia. Instead, I logged into the cellular provider's website. There it was, the family plan. 4 lines, unlimited data, $340 a month, automatically deducted from my account for the last 5 years. I clicked the Settings tab. I selected the 3 lines that did not belong to me. I hit Remove. The confirmation screen asked if I was sure. I clicked Yes without a tremor in my hand. Next were the streaming services: Netflix, Hulu, HBO, Spotify, all billed to my credit card, all logged in from IP addresses in my parents' zip code. I went down the list like a surgeon excising necrotic tissue. Cancel, cancel, cancel. I logged into my Amazon Prime account. I archived the order history years of Cameron ordering entrepreneurial mindset books and gaming equipment on my dime, and then I changed the password. I removed my credit card from the family Uber account. I watched the notifications hit my email inbox. It was not petty. It was an audit. For years, my compassion had been a luxury they had overdrafted. Now, the bank was closed. I spent the next hour downloading every single bank statement from the last 7 years, every transfer I had ever made to them, every loan for a car repair that never happened, every emergency rent payment for Cameron. I compiled it all into a single, encrypted folder titled Evidence. Only then did I pick up my phone. I dialed Stephanie. We had gone to college together. But while I went into supply chain management, Stephanie went into corporate litigation. She was not a handholder. She was a shark who smelled blood in the water before it even broke the surface. She answered on the second ring. Alyssa, you never call during shift hours. What's wrong? I need to hire you, I said. My voice sounded strange to my own ears, flat, metallic, devoid of vibration. Not as a friend, I need a retainer agreement. My parents just served me with a lawsuit for $200,000. There was a pause on the other end, followed by the distinct sound of a chair scraping back. "Send me the filing," Stephanie said, her tone instantly shifting from casual to lethal. "And Alyssa, do not say a word to them. If they want to treat you like a defendant, we are going to treat them like the opposition." I hung up the phone and looked out the window at the darkening street. They wanted a war for resources. Fine. I would give them a famine. As Stephanie and I began the forensic audit of my financial history, the black and white numbers on the spreadsheet began to bleed into color memories. I was not looking at data points anymore. I was looking at the ghosts of the girl I used to be. I was 18 years old when I took the graveyard shift at the distribution center, while my brother Cameron was on a gap year in Europe, finding himself in hostels paid for by my parents' second mortgage. I was finding myself in the freezing aisle of a warehouse at 3 a.m. My hands were always covered in paper cuts from cardboard boxes. My back ached with a dull, throbbing rhythm that became the soundtrack of my young adulthood. I did not work that hard because I loved logistics. I worked that hard because I had done the math. And I knew that in the Wilson family economy, I was the sole provider of my own survival. By the time I was 19, I had saved $16,500. It sat in a joint savings account I had opened with my father when I was 16. A detail I had foolishly overlooked in my race to adulthood. That money was my escape hatch. It was a used car, a semester of tuition, a down payment on freedom. But here is the thing about being the capable child. The one who never asks for help. The one who handles everything without complaint. It is not a badge of honor. It is a curse. When you are strong, people stop checking on you. They stop asking if you are okay because they assume you are. Your competence becomes their excuse for neglect. They do not support you because they think you do not need it. And eventually, that neglect morphs into something far more parasitic. They start to believe that because you can carry the weight, you should carry theirs too. I learned this the hard way on a Tuesday in November. I went to the bank to withdraw funds for a certified pre-owned sedan I had been eyeing for months. I handed the teller my slip. She frowned, typed something into her keyboard, and looked up at me with pity in her eyes. The account was empty. $3,400 had been withdrawn that morning. I stared at the receipt. The signature at the bottom was familiar. It was my father's. I drove home in a borrowed car, my heart hammering against my ribs. I found my parents in the kitchen, eating, takeout. When I threw the withdrawal slip on the table, they did not look guilty. They looked annoyed. "Cameron needed help," my mother said, wiping her mouth with a paper napkin. "He got into a little trouble in Prague. A misunderstanding with local law enforcement. We had to wire bail money and legal fees immediately." "That was my money," I said, my voice shaking. "I worked double shifts for that." My father looked at me, his eyes cold and pragmatic. "You have a job. Alyssa, you can earn it back in a few months. Cameron does not have that luxury. He is alone in a foreign country. We had to prioritize the crisis." That was the logic that defined my existence. My stability was punished to subsidize his chaos. My hard work was not my own. It was an insurance policy for my brother's mistakes. They did not steal from me because they were evil villains twirling mustaches. They stole from me because they viewed me as a resource, not a person. To them, my money was family money. But their money was Cameron's money. I walked out of the kitchen that night and went to my room. I did not cry. I sat on the edge of my bed and realized that I was completely alone. The $3,400 was gone. but it bought me something invaluable. It bought me the clarity that I was not their daughter. I was their safety net. And safety nets do not get to have dreams. They only exist to catch the people who fall. Looking at the lawsuit on Stephanie's desk, I realized nothing had changed. The numbers were bigger, $200,000 instead of $3,000, but the principle was identical. They were not suing me for justice. They were suing me because they were falling again. And they were furious that I had finally moved out of the way. 3 days later, the ambush arrived. I knew it was coming. In any hostile takeover attempt, when the initial demand letter is ignored, the aggressor physically escalates to force a negotiation. I was in my kitchen reviewing a supply chain manifest when the motion sensors on my porch camera triggered. I looked at the monitor. It was my father, my mother, and Cameron. They were standing on my front porch, pounding on the door like they were the police. I did not feel fear. I felt a cold, clinical exhaustion. I walked to the door, unlocked it, and stepped out onto the porch, pulling the door shut behind me. I did not invite them in. You do not invite liability into your asset. You ignored the service, my father shouted, his face a mottled red that clashed with his beige windbreaker. You think you can just ignore a lawsuit from your own family. I forwarded it to my legal counsel, I said, my voice flat. Any communication needs to go through her. Legal counsel Cameron laughed. A sharp, bitter sound. He looked thinner than I remembered. His eyes manic and rimmed with red. You have money for a lawyer. But you didn't have seed money for my platform. You are sitting on $400,000 of equity in this house. Alyssa, that is family capital. You are hoarding it while I drown. It is not family capital. I corrected him. It is my capital. I bought the ruin. I renovated the ruin. I pay the mortgage. We raised you, my mother screamed, tears streaming down her face in a performance I had seen 1,000 times. We sacrificed everything for you. And now, you sit here in your castle and watch your brother suffer. We just want what is fair. Sign over 50% of the equity to Cameron. We drop the lawsuit. We can be a family again. I looked at them. I really looked at them. For years, I thought they were just greedy. I thought they just liked Cameron more. But as I stood there, watching my father shake with rage and my mother weep with weaponized grief, the final piece of the puzzle clicked into place. They were not angry because they were broke. They were not angry because they loved Cameron. They were angry because I was still standing. To a narcissist, the independence of the scapegoat is not a relief. It is an insult. My success was a mirror. Every time they looked at my house, my career, and my stability, they saw a reflection of their own failure. If I could succeed without their help, without their money, and without their love, then it proved that their neglect was not a necessity. It was a choice. My competence exposed their incompetence. My survival was a testimony against them. They did not want my money to help Cameron. They wanted to take my money to punish me for having it. They needed to break me to feel whole again. The realization washed over me like ice water. This was not a negotiation. It was an attempt to dismantle my reality so they could maintain theirs. Get off my porch, I said. Excuse me, my father stepped forward, his hand raising in a threat he hadn't used since I was 16. I said, get off my property. I repeated, not flinching. I have cameras recording audio and video. If you are not on the sidewalk in 10 seconds, I am calling the police and pressing charges for trespassing and harassment. I am not your daughter right now. I am a property owner, and you are a security threat. My father stopped. He looked at the camera lens glowing above the door. He looked at my eyes. He saw something there he had never seen before. He didn't see fear. He saw the cold, hard wall of a closed account. "You will regret this." He spat. "I regret a lot of things," I said, "but this won't be one of them." They turned and walked down the steps. I watched them get into their car and drive away. I didn't go back inside immediately. I stood in the cold air, breathing in the silence. They had escalated the conflict, hoping I would fold under the emotional pressure. But they had forgotten who they were dealing with. I was a logistician. I didn't fold under pressure. I audited the source of the stress and eliminated it. I went back inside and called Stephanie. "They just showed up," I said. "Did you speak to them?" "I told them to leave. They demanded 50% of my equity." "Good," Stephanie said, the smile audible in her voice. "That establishes intent to extort. Alyssa, we are going to file for discovery. I want to see every single financial record they have for the last 10 years. If they want to claim family equity, we are going to audit the entire family." "Do it," I said. "Burn it down." Discovery is a terrifying word for people who live in glass houses, and my parents had been throwing stones for decades. When Stephanie filed the motion, she did not ask for a summary. She demanded everything. Tax returns for the last 10 years. Bank statements from every open and closed account. Credit card bills. Loan applications. Gambling loss statements. We cast a net so wide it scraped the bottom of the ocean floor. My parents tried to fight it. Their lawyer filed a motion to quash, claiming the request was overly burdensome and irrelevant. Stephanie stood in front of a judge and argued that since the plaintiffs were claiming familial equity, the entire financial history of the family was the only relevant metric. The judge agreed. He gave them 14 days to produce the documents or face contempt charges. 2 weeks later, 18 bankers' boxes arrived at Stephanie's office. We turned her conference room into a war room. The air smelled of stale coffee and printer toner. For 3 nights, we did not sleep. We became forensic archaeologists, digging through the strata of my parents' financial ruin. The first layer of documents showed exactly what I expected: years of mismanagement. My mother's designer shopping sprees, Cameron's fake business trips, even student loans taken in his name and funneled into my father's account to pay for a luxury car. They had gutted my brother's future to finance appearances. But on the 3rd night, Stephanie found the real problem: a refinance application. My parents had refinanced the house for the 3rd time, claiming a $300, 000 income when they made under $90. 000. They forged W-2 seconds, pulled out $150, 000, and burned through it in weeks gambling. Loan sharks. Country club dues. Then we found the unopened notice of default. They hadn't paid the mortgage in 4 months. Foreclosure was 30 days away. The truth hit me hard. They weren't suing me for fairness. They were trying to steal my home because they were about to lose theirs. At the deposition, Stephanie laid out the forged paperwork, the transfers, the default notice. Their lawyer went pale. My parents finally admitted they were desperate and begged me to save them. I refused. They didn't see me as a daughter, only as a financial asset. Instead, I handed my father a countersuit for the $3. $400 he stole from me when I was 19. It wasn't revenge. It was accountability. 6 months later, my family had lost the house and was under federal investigation. Cameron was doing manual labor to survive. I felt no triumph, only balance. Justice wasn't about punishing them. It was about withdrawing my support and letting their own decisions take effect. Now my life is peaceful, stable, and mine alone. I built my future on solid ground without them,